Okay, so I have a Logic project created with an external MIDI instrument track routed to an instance of the DLS music device playing back the QuickTime synthesizer. Now if you're not sure how to do this, if you refer to the previous video, there's an instruction of how to set this up there. So where we left off last time, we had a trumpet sound routed to the QuickTime synth. And if I just bring up our caps lock keyboard there, you should be able to see and hear that happening. Okay. So what we're going to do is take a look at what goes in to programming the MIDI header data at the top of the file. So I'm going to create a few different external MIDI instrument tracks. Let's have two more. And to bring those up, I'm going to click Command, Alt and N and ask Logic for two external MIDI tracks. That's created those for us. We've got a trumpet here, caps lock keyboard. Click on the next one down. Says it's a polysynth. That's interesting. And fretless bass. Yeah, that sounds like a piano to me as well. It looks like we're going to need to do some programming in our list editor to make these sounds the sounds we want them to be. So what I'm going to suggest is that we define this first track as a general MIDI drum kit, this second track as an electric bass, and for this third track we'll have an electric piano. So if we come over to our media lists and notes area on the top right hand side of the screen here and click on the lists area. Looking at the event list, we are going to look at creating some MIDI event data. And the first thing I'm going to do is create a controller, a reset controller, right at the top of our sequence. You can see here we've got a filter or create button. So I can ask Logic to filter out certain events to make this more easily to navigate. Or I can actually ask it to create events. So the first thing I'm going to do is click off additional info so that we've got nothing filtered whatsoever on these buttons here. Then I'm going to go to the create mode and just ask Logic to create a controller right at the top of the file. We have an error message here. Can't insert MIDI events into folders. Now the reason for that is that we need to have a region for our MIDI data to go into at the top of the file. So getting rid of the caps lock keyboard, I'm going to hit escape and select our pencil tool. So escape and 2 selects your pencil tool, and for each of these three external MIDI tracks I'm going to click in 1 bar's worth of MIDI region. So I can now enter some header data into these. Now it wasn't evident in the MIDI file that we looked at previously, but there's been a convention for some time called a MIDI offset. And this is where the MIDI information is offset from the header information by a bar or sometimes more to give the instruments, the sound sources, synthesizers, bits and pieces that you're using time to catch up and make those changes. So if you're working with legacy gear, that's a useful thing to have in there, but also I find it quite useful to separate clearly the header data in your file from the rest of the sequence. So we're going to put in an offset to bar 5. Our header data will go here, and then later we'll create a region at bar 5 to begin entering our sequence into. So clicking on what's our trumpet region at the moment, And coming back over to our list event view, we are going to click Create Controller. We'll leave the position where it is for the moment, right at the top of the file, and I'm going to create this reset message. So the reset control is control number 121. So that's just going to reset everything on our synth, our sound module, or our sampler right at the start of the sequence before anything else happens. And we're going to make use of these positions just to separate out our different bits of controller information. So thinking back to the last MIDI file that we looked at, the next thing we need to do is put in a program change number. So with create still selected, if I hit program change, what will happen is it will create that program change again right at the top of the sequence. And what we prefer to do, if possible, is just move that below. So at position 2, beat 2, we've got the program change entered, and at the moment it's just selecting program number 0, grand piano. This drop down list, we can see we've got all of our GM sounds available to us, 0 through to 127. Now the more observant of you might have noticed as I scroll quickly down that list, there aren't any drum kits. And that's because in GM spec, there's a particular channel number that's always reserved for drums. And that's channel number 10. So if I actually change our channel number here to 10, and do the same here, what we're going to get is a drum kit. Instead of anything else, regardless of what it says here, program 10 on channel 10 is going to begin playing back our drum kit. So we can see, looking here, that this is still addressing channel 1. So I need to change that to channel 10. And you can see automatically now our program change relates to the different drum sets that there are. Standard drum and standard drum 2 are program 0 and 1. Room set drum is program 9. Power set drum is program 17. An electronic set is 25. A jazz drum set 33. Let's try selecting an electronic set. So we've got a program number of 25. We can see this has changed and updated to standard drum, but we've still got our region named something different. It still thinks this is a trumpet essentially. So what we're going to do about that is just click escape and go down to our text tool, or tool number 4, and just enter in drum on that particular region. Okay. Now we want to look at programming in some volume and pan information into the rest of our header data. So what I'm going to suggest is that we click Create and then Controller, and that comes up right at the start of the file again, so we need to edit the position. And you can see as standard that's come up with a volume controller helpfully. So we're going to, on 3, enter in a volume control of 127. Maybe we don't want our drums to be quite that loud. Let's go with a figure of 100. And that's set our volume. So the next thing we'll do is create another controller. Again, comes up at the top. And we'll put that at beat 3, 13. And 1. Just to pop the pan underneath the volume. So we've got both of these volume controls both setting 100 now. If we change the control number to controller 10, which is pan, we've got a pan value of 100. Now I'm going to suggest we pan our drums dead center for the moment. Bit boring, I know. So our drums have a central panning position there, the electronic set, pan positions in the centre. And just to show you that's actually working, what I'll do is set the pan value to 0 for a moment, and you can see that's updated here. Okay? So put our pan back to the centre, 64, and we've got a basic bit of header data. So we've done pretty well. However, there are a couple of bits of information that quite often go into the header data, and these relate to the effects at the start of the file. So what I think I'd like is just a little bit of reverb on my electronic kit. So in order for me to do that, I need to hit Create Controller again, and I'm going to put this information on beat 4. If I then click on the controller number and select 91, which you'll see is reverb. And that comes up with a default value of 64. Logic will always try and second guess you in giving you the last value that you entered. I'm just going to drop that to somewhere around 40. Don't want too much reverb on my drum kit. And you can see here that there is a reverb value that is updated for our drums. We've got a volume of 64, which changed last I edited it. If I click play now, we'll see our volume jump to 100. Okay? Just to be aware of that, these things do change as you update. So if you've got a new, fresh controller 7 message that comes up with the last default value that you've entered, then that can change things, but the benefit of this is going back to the start of our sequence, clicking play will reset to the value you intended it to be. Great. Okay, so that's our basic header data information for our drum kit. So the next thing for us to do is look at getting that working for an electric bass on this second track down for channel 2. And things, thankfully, should be a little bit more simple. We have no need to change the channel number here. Channel 2 is absolutely fine for our electric bass. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to click Create, and I'm just going to go right ahead and create a reset control, as we did previously. Okay. 1, 2, 1. Reset. Set the reset value to 127, and then we'll go into create a program change, some volume and panning information as well. I'm just going to go through and create that. Controller, separate that onto beat 2, volume, let's set the electric bass volume to 95. And again, controller, we'll pop that on beat 2, 1, and change that to a pan control. And let's pan our electric bass. Whoa. Again, we're not going to want to place that to the sides of our mix particularly. So I'm going to go with a rather boring, predictable central pan value. So not much use of stereo field going on particularly. But that set that information up for us. And then finally, we can go through and put in any reverb or chorus that we might want on our bass. So some chorus might be quite nice. What we're going to do is just enter a controller, and we'll put this on beat 4, enter in a controller number of 93, which you can see is chorus depth. That's come up with the last value we entered, 64. And I'm just going to put in a value of, I don't know, 50. Not sure how that's going to sound, but we can edit that later. Okay, and you can see over here on the left hand side in your inspector bar that chorus has been adjusted to 50. So what we're going to look at doing now then is sorting out this MIDI header data, we've got a couple of problems. First of all, I haven't entered a program change message. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And I'm going to put that in on beat 2. Okay. And the program number for a bass, an electric bass, let's have a look. Acoustic bass, finger bass, fretless bass, pick bass. Let's go for a finger bass. Program 33. Okay. Now you can see when I entered my controller information for volume and pan, they went in on beat 2 also, which isn't a big issue, but just for the sake of consistency, I'm going to put those on the same beat 2. So, our volume and our pan on beat 3. So we now have a reset control, a program change to finger bass, a volume controller at 95, a pan controller in a central position of 64, and chorus depth programmed in at 50. So I think you've probably got the hang of it by now. And what I'm going to do is go through and finish up the programming for the electric piano on channel number 3, and we can take things from there. So I've been away and I've done some programming, and you can see that I've programmed in some header data for the electric piano. A reset control, a program change to electric piano 2, a volume controller of 100, pan control of 39, so minus 25, pan slightly to the left, and a reverb of 50. So I'm just going to update that to 40 actually, have a bit less. What we can see over here is in our track list we've got an electronic drum set, a finger bass, and an electric piano that we've programmed in. This region's still displaying polysynth, and this one's still displaying finger bass. And Logic actually has quite a nice command that allows us to sort that out quickly. If we go to the region drop down menu and ask Logic to name tracks by channel strips, color regions by, if we just select that, you can see that automatically each of the tracks, each of the regions in that track update to be called the same thing. So we do the same with the electric piano. Name regions by tracks and channel strips. And what we have now is an electronic drum set, a finger bass, and an electric piano ready for us to start sequencing. So the last thing I'll do before I leave you is grab a pencil tool and just draw in a short region on each of those tracks at bar 5. Marquee drag and select them, and just extend that to 2 bars. Okay, great. So I'll leave things there. Well done if you stuck it this far, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye.